Hey Jan, thanks for joining me for this 15 minutes in AI interview. Before we jump in, I would love for both of us to share a quick introduction so listeners know who we are and where we're coming from. I'm happy to go first. My name is Daniel. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Capsa AI. We focus on applying AI to streamline the due diligence process for private equity firms. And we've already spoken with over 200 GPs to learn more about where AI can best add value in PE. Jan, could you please introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm Jan Beitner, and I'm the director for data and AI at Inflexion, the mid-market player in Northern Europe with around 11 billion AUM. And I mostly spend my time on the value creation side of things. So with the portfolio, driving AI and the value there. But then also a good proportion of my time spent is on the internal side and how we can make the GP work better.
Thanks, Jan. It's great to have you here. Let's maybe dive into our questions on AI's evolving impact in private equity. From your experience, which parts of the deal lifecycle, like sourcing, due diligence, or portfolio management, have the most untapped potential for AI-driven efficiency or insights?
I think people rightly started off with origination. It was the easiest, and I think there was also the lowest hanging fruits to just plug and identify potential bolt-on opportunities. I think there is some still untapped potential of doing that early DD that allows you to triage quickly and early on. So I think that's actually quite a big thing. So that outside in DD. If you now think about like more towards the DD streams of things, I think there is a lot of automation potential, particularly on tax DD and legal DD and probably IT DD. There's a question mark if this will benefit the GPs a lot if this doesn't get completely insourced, and probably we just expect our DD providers to up their game and then eventually pass onward those benefits to us. I think the biggest really untapped potential, if you think about investment returns, is on the portfolio side, obviously. So if you can do a much quicker value creation planning in the beginning, much more in depth, much more conviction about what exactly you now have to do, I think there's probably the most potential from like a returns perspective.
Great insights. Appreciate it, Jan. Next, I would love to hear more about the main hurdles PE firms face when trying to integrate AI, whether they're cultural, regulatory, or technical. Which barriers do you see most often, and how do you think firms can overcome them?
Yeah, I think most people, when they think about PE, is like it's a conservative industry, but actually, my experience is very much people are very keen on innovation, and I get all the time people asking me, how can I improve myself with AI, right? How can I become more productive? How can I make better decisions? And so there's a lot of education to be done, but at Inflexion, for example, we have more than 50% of people using our internal version of ChatGPT integrated with internal data on a regular basis. So I think adoption and the keenness on innovation is not the issue. I think it's probably like, I don't want to call it a technical problem, but there's a data problem. So it's not a type of industry where we record data super well, and there's a lot of data that actually never ever gets recorded. All the meetings that people do, you don't come to a in-person meeting and say, oh, can I please record this now? And actually this information is really, really important. So that end-to-end visibility that you have in many other companies of your data that you could get is really difficult to get in PE. And so I think that is a big, big challenge.
That's really helpful. Appreciate the feedback there. Another very important topic that is on top of mind with every client that we work with is data security and compliance. They're obviously massive priorities in the industry. What is the biggest around AI-driven workflows in that context, and what best practices would you recommend?
I mean, there's the lockdown challenge, right? Making sure you don't have that sensitive information for someone to actually access. I know there's a bigger problem at some of our competitors. We fortunately solved that, but it was a bigger project. So you don't want to find the health details of some management on your SharePoint accessible to everyone, right? You don't want that. But then I think there's a lot of people are afraid of those data leaks because models get trained on data. Now, I think in reality, that risk doesn't really exist. So if you think about it, that I'm not aware of a single real data leak coming out of a model, right? And so it's currently very good money for lawyers right now. Having said that, you have to do the due diligence, right, on the general IT security. You can just directly leak the data. It doesn't have to be through the trained AI model. So I think there's a lot of concerns that need to be overcome. But otherwise, the best practice is about access control, just in the very classic sense.
Absolutely. On the topic of our ROI, many PE firms want to know exactly how to measure the impact of AI solutions. Which metrics or performance indicators do you think best capture whether an AI tool is really delivering value?
I mean, I think people would love to see this. Yeah, how much did AI contribute to a successful deal? I think you've got a huge attribution issue here because so many factors are in there. So I think you need to look at the underlying processes that make a deal successful. Very much like how you would look at underlying processes at a portfolio company to think about which KPIs really drive that success. Right? And it's nice to look at, did the revenue go up? But actually, you go look at a lot more detail. And so the things that I think are really useful. So we, for example, we're looking into how many companies get added to our CRM by those tools. Right? This is kind of like how many leads do you generate with this, in essence. And then from a productivity perspective, we look at how much usage do we get, right? And you can dissect this by type of usage to get a handle on how much additional productivity do you get out of this. I think later on, when we're getting to DDs, eventually we might be seeing DDs being sped up a lot. And a faster DD increases your deliverability, and so it makes you more competitive. And so I think that does then a really interesting metric to look at. I'm not sure we're there yet. And then the same would go for the value creation plan in depth, how well is that actually built upon proper data. But I think you need to look at processes and not at that, oh yeah, this is an overall successful deal. There's just too many people and variables involved in this.
Right. That makes sense. Thank you. I would love to take your take on transparency and trust. As AI becomes more central to critical decisions, how can PE firms ensure that investment committees and stakeholders feel confident and informed about AI-driven insights?
Yeah, I think the first thing actually that don't trust is actually an issue right now with large language models, particularly because we're mostly doing knowledge management. And we actually don't ask large language models to do any judgment, at least right now. And so they follow just predefined rules. And so the actual judgment an LLM does is very low. So there's not much trust that you need to have in a system working. What you need to have is the ability to look how it came to a conclusion, right? Did it follow your rules correctly? So it's much more about traceability of something happening and why something happened. And the question, if you look at this, is much easier for language models than for traditional AI, because language models reason in natural language. So you can give this to your expert and you can just look at this. Traditional AI works almost purely based on numbers, and the vast majority even of domain experts will not necessarily understand why things happen like they happen, because it's a superhuman capability. But I think our language models are not necessarily superhuman yet, and so you can explain what's actually happening. It's probably more about an education issue than an actual trust problem or transparency issue.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Jan. Maybe for my last question, I would like to just touch on the outlook. Looking 5 years down the line, where do you see the biggest gaps or opportunities for AI&P?
Yeah, I think it's like on some of the DD work streams that are super codifiable, that are very cookie cutter, like checklist like, and hope not offending anyone here, but I think it's probably legal, tax, ITDD. I think those ones are pretty big. I think next 5 years. I think the other part is that early market mapping and outside in analysis that we often do in early DD to triage. What I don't think it is probably some of the commercial DD. And I think also on the portfolio side, I'm not sure we're going to be already in 5 years able to throw an agent into a portfolio and just make sense of stuff. I think that's not going to work.
Super helpful. Appreciate it, Jan. This has been incredibly valuable. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights. I really appreciate being part of the 15 Minutes in AI series. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Daniel.